which is, as I mentioned yesterday in the syllabus, it is part of an introductory session, okay, which is the first chapter in this course, which is about some vital concept of databases and database users. Okay, now when we talk about the database or databases system or systems, there is, I think every one of you has encountered several types of several have done, let's say, has done several activities that are related or that has, let's say, that involve some interaction with the database itself. Can anyone give us, Shabab, anyone has an idea about any activity that you have done in your life, daily life, that has something related to the database, that have some interaction with the database?
Registration. So yeah, once you register information, registration in PSU.
Yes, university information.
Your information is added.
Yes, registration PSU. Anything else, Shabab?
Actually, Doctor, the process of memorized things
that involves the process of what?
Memorize things and retrieve them from our memory. I think I have problem in my net. I don't know.
The memory is not part of the database. We are talking about a database system that consists of storing data permanently, okay? And you can go back to the database and you can retrieve the data from the database. When you say memory, it is volatile. So that means you cannot keep it. It is not considered as a database. We are talking about a system that has some storage where you store your data and you can access it and you can retrieve data and information from that system. Anything else, Shabab? In PSU, what do you have as a database?
In PSU, but
in
I mean,
PSU, for instance,
any web-based applications, any website, they basically use a database to get to store their, for example, pictures, for example, the students, anything, and then retrieve it and portray it in a website so people can see it, and basically encrypt or like make
not
it
necessarily
secure.
Yes, it depends on the website. Not all the websites have interaction with the database. Okay, usually the website that have, let's say, that works on based on the client server, let's say, topology, those websites have access or they do have interaction with the database. But in normal website, for normal website, not necessarily they do have interaction with the database. For instance, if you go, for instance, to Google, okay, Google has interaction with their huge database because they are storing data and they are letting people to access and search within the database. We go back to our PSU, for instance, the library. Okay, when you go to the library, you are searching, for instance, you go to the library computer system and search, for instance, for some titles or some authors' books, for instance. You are interacting with your database. Sometimes you do, for instance, banking, online banking. When you do online banking, you are interacting with the database. When you purchase something online, okay, you go, for instance, to souk.com or amazon.com and you purchase, you go through, let's say, some items and you do purchase of some items, you are interacting with the database. Even if you go to the supermarket, for instance, you go to the supermarket and you are buying goods from supermarket, and the goods, when you buy something, okay, and the system will register that items and it will automatically update, okay, the number of such items within that supermarket. That means when we talk about the database and the interactions with the database, it is part of our daily life. We cannot live without interacting with the database. Whenever you go, there is something related to interaction with the database. Okay. Now, in terms of the interaction for the database, that interactions, let's say these types of interactions are just example what is known as, they are called traditional database applications. When you talk about database applications or traditional database applications, that means you do have some types of data or information, and that information is stored in the database are the different types of, let's say, whether it can be stored as a text or it can be stored as numeric information. So this is based on, let's say, how that data is stored within the database. Now, over the years, okay, when you talk about, you go, for instance, to the starting of the database, okay, at the beginning of the internet, the beginning of, let's say, the softwares and computers, there were only text and numbers that can be stored. But over the years, okay, things has evolved and the technology has evolved, which, let's say, a new types of data has been created. Okay, you go, for instance, now we do have the ability to store images, we do have ability to store videos, we do have ability to store, let's say, audio streams, for instance, audio files. And this type of database is called as multimedia database. They are new database. Instead of storing only text and numbers, now we can, let's say, increase and we can upgrade our storage and transform our storage or data to be of type images, videos, sound, and any types of, let's say, multimedia. Anything that is under the umbrella of the multimedia, okay, it is part of, let's say, the database that you can consult and you can go and search within your that type of database. Another type of database which is known as geographic information. When you talk about maps, okay, if you go to Google Map, for instance, or Google Earth, you do have that maps, all, let's say, the information related to the map, okay, they are stored in some specific types of database. For instance, we talk about weather data. Okay, when you talk about weather data, that means we are talking about storing such type of data. Okay, the temperature and the forecast of the weather of, let's say, daily, weekly, monthly, of any types of, let's say, location. You do have satellite images. Okay, these are new types of data and needs to be stored. And if you can see here, we are talking about, let's say, the database is evolving with the technology. Okay, because it needs the new technology, the new types of data needs to be stored somewhere, need to be retrieved from somewhere, and of course, automatically in parallel, there are new types of database that are creating accordingly to, let's say, to store such type of data. We can have also what is known as data warehouses and online analytical processing systems. Here we talk about, you do have business information. You have some types of business information that is extracted from a large database, and you extract that data and you do analysis of that data in order to take decision, in order, for instance, to improve the business of XYZ organization. This type of database is also related to the new type of data or the huge data. Maybe we can talk about the big data, for instance. You can have real-time and active database. Sometimes when you talk about manufacturing processes, okay, you do have machines and you are receiving, let's say you do have one machine related to another machine, and each one is waiting for the other, let's say, machine to process and to send its output or data in order just to take that data and push it into another machine and so on. So these are the type of database that can be called real-time database technology, and mostly they can be found in industrial environment and machinery. Okay, these are, let's say, yes.
Yeah, I have a question about
Yes.
data warehouses. Are they like
Yes.
data centers, so buildings, or is it just a metaphor?
We are talking about data warehouse is about the manufacture. When you do have machines, okay, and you do have, like in Q, you are working in, let's say for instance, you do have a car manufacturer, okay, and you do have many machines, and each machine will do some specific task, okay, and each machine is sending the data, is processing doing some tasks, and it will send its output to another machine to do the other part, and so on. So there will be like a queue, and each machine is getting data from the other machine, and it is an online one. Okay, so that means you are not having, you are receiving data. Okay, it's like, for instance, you are receiving data in order to do the next process. You do have process A, process B, process C. Process A, B will start running when process E finishes and send its output to process B, and so on. Okay, and when you talk about processes, it is within the machines themselves.
Yeah,
okay,
so
Talal?
yeah, my question is like, what is meant by a warehouse? Is it like a
Sorry?
physical warehouse?
Yes, yes, a physical warehouse, yes, a manufacturer, yes. مصنع. The warehouse is a مصنع.
Okay.
Okay, and sometimes you can have warehouse, for instance, for storing goods. Okay,
so
you are storing, for instance, you have a big warehouse where you store computers, and you have a system. Each time you do, for instance, number of computers are out of the store, for instance, of the warehouse, the system is automatically updated. Okay, so it is continuously, you are selling goods, that means you are removing some items from that warehouse, and the system automatically will increase or will decrease, will update its data as well.
So is it similar to like a data center? So some companies have like big data centers.
No, data center is something else. Data center is something else. It's not good. It is not part of the warehouse. It is not a warehouse. Data center.
Okay.
It is an IT center with computers. It's not part of, let's say, it is on itself. It's not a database part. But you can find inside the data center, you can find servers with the database or the web server inside the data center.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry, Doctor. I did not get the difference between data warehouse and real-time and active database.
Say it again.
I did not get the difference between them, data warehouse and real-time and active database.
For the warehouse, okay, as I gave an example, you do have a business, okay, and you have business, for instance, and you are storing, you sell computers, okay, you have 1,000 computers stored in the warehouse, for instance, okay, and you are selling computers, let's say, online. Okay, now in practice, what you can do, for instance, let's say you have an event and you received let's say 200 order for let's say to sell to them, for instance, those computers. What do? Do you wait, let's say, until you exhaust all you sell all your PCs, for instance, in order to book or to order new PCs for your business? Or you should do something which is known as you have to do analysis of your data. Each time, for instance, you sell something, you do analysis of that data, and you will say, I have just sold now 200 PCs, and the rhythm of, let's say, selling is increasing. Maybe in 5 or 3 months, I will run out from the computers. I will not have any type of computers or any computer within my warehouse. So I will, at that moment, I have to order a new, let's say, a number of computers from another, let's say, company. Okay, and while waiting, I will have no business. So what you do, whenever you do have, for instance, you do have your warehouse and you do have data within your warehouse, Okay, and each time, let's say you sell something, you analyze, let's say, the number of computers remaining within your warehouse. Okay, and based on, let's say, the number of remaining, you will decide. That's why we are talking about decision making. You will decide whether you will order a new batch of computers from another company or not. This is just an example of a warehouse. Okay, for the real time, that means you are receiving data in real time. Okay, you are receiving data in real time in order to process it. As I gave an example for the machines. Okay, you have, let's say, chemical machines or chemical manufacturers, and each machine is doing some process, and it will send its data to the next machine to do another process. So that means you are receiving data in real time. Al-Mubashir, you are receiving data in real time. It's not like something that is stored in the database, okay, and you are retrieving that database. It is in real time. It has been created now and sent your. It's like, for instance, just an example, for instance, for the shares. Okay, you are receiving, let's say, shares prices, and you decide whether to sell or to buy, for instance. You are receiving real-time data. You have weather, for instance, the weather data. Okay, whenever you are receiving real-time weather data in order just to take decision, okay, to take, let's say, vital decision within your business. These are known as real-time database. That means the data is coming. It is fresh data. It is continuously, you are continuously monitoring. Let's say you are monitoring the temperature of your room, for instance. Okay, you are receiving, you are getting the data, you are reading data live in real time, and you are using that data to take other decision, for instance. But usually, when we talk about real-time and active database technology, we are specifically talking about control industrial, because you are controlling. To control a machine, let's say, for instance, I am receiving data, and in real time, in order to control some types of machines, let's say you do have a barrage, okay, where you are controlling the level of water, for instance, okay, and you are receiving real time of the level of the water, and once that level reaches some threshold, some number, for instance, you have to open valve, okay, to let the water goes out. These are, let's say, real-time data, and it is used to control some specific, let's say, physical, for instance, events within your environment. Okay, Shabab?
Clear, Doctor.
Doctor,
Okay.
Naam?
So basically, we're using the information that we have at the moment to start a process, or like ordering new stuff or letting water flow, like you said?
Yes.
And the system does it on its own. We program it to do it on its own, basically automation.
Yes, of course, it is automated. It is based on some program which are not cyber physical systems. These are big physical systems that are related to that. You have computer part and they do have physical part, and that computer part will control the mechanism of the physical part. And when you receive data in real time, you can take decision.
The system takes the decision. We don't have to be there and like say yes to the decision it will make.
There are many times, there are different types of such system. You can have people, let's say, in the control room receiving real data, okay, and when they receive real data, they analyze that data and they will send commands back to those devices. Or you can have some algorithms, some programs that have been the code that has been implemented within the machines, and automatically, okay, when you receive real data, it's just like an if statement. If, let's say, temperature is greater than 25, switch on AC, for instance. If it is less, turn off the AC. Okay, it can be commanded by people, or it can be automatically done by the machine that has been programmed for such task. But the idea is you are receiving real data. You are receiving real data. It's not like data that has been stored. Okay, it can be an old data, but here we are talking real-time data. You keep receiving data. Okay, Shabab?
So it's
Okay,
it's not
thank you.
stored anywhere, right? The real-time data.
Naam?
The real-time data isn't stored in a database.
It depends, Shabab, it depends. But usually that real data doesn't need to be stored. Why? Because the value of the data at that time is not after, let's say, now that data is important. Okay, but after, let's say, a few seconds, it's not important. Maybe now the data, the temperature is high. After a few seconds, it would be low. But we are not saying that it will not be stored. You might store your data for later analysis in case of something happened. Okay, but when we talk about the value of the data, okay, the value of the data is at that moment when you receive that data. Because if I receive, let's say, we go to our, let's say, the barrage, for instance. Okay, if you receive the data, if the level of the water is high, and that information, that data, you received it after 2 minutes, it's too late. Okay, so that means when you talk about the value of data, it is one thing, and storing or receiving real data is another thing. Here we're not talking about whether we are store or we don't store. We are talking about the type of data, the type of database. Some database are receiving real data. Okay, you might store that data later for analysis. Okay, as you might not store. It depends of the environment you are working on. Clear, guys?
Clear.
Yes.
Okay. Now, when we talk about that database, we have been talking about the database. What is database in reality?
It's all the.
What is the database?
It is all the things around us. So, in the world, I mean, it's even.
If I tell you, I do have a database now. Okay.
Yes.
What is database in itself?
It's
storage hard.
It's way to store data.
Data store.
Okay, it stores data. Okay, you said it stores the data. Now, that data itself, what is, let's say, the characteristic of such data?
It can be number, it can be text, it can be images.
Okay.
The data is common.
Now, if I tell you, Shabab, I do have now a database, okay, that contains, let's say, that contains student names, okay, and vegetables. What do you think?
Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. Why?
Because the data is not related.
Barakallah. Whenever you talk about the database, okay, we talk about collection of related data. This is the idea with the database. You are not going to create a database that does have, let's say, data that is not related to each other. Of course, I will have database, for instance, when I said, for instance, university database, okay, I will have student information, I will have course information, I will have instructors information. All this, okay, there are different types of data: student data, courses data, prerequisite data, course prerequisite data, instructors data, but they do have some relation because they are from the same environment and they are needed to be within the same database. Okay, this type of data are related. This can be called as, let's say, a database. Okay, that means whenever we talk about that database, you are not going to mix up the data that is not related, unless, okay, if I give you, for instance, I will tell you student and vegetables, unless I do have something in the database that will relate, let's say, the diet of student. We say student, we do have, for some reason, we put, for instance, this type of information to track or to analyze what students eat every day, or what are, let's say, their diet in their life, for instance. But if there is nothing related, we cannot put them within the same database. That means whenever you create a database and you put data inside database, you have to make sure that all the data within the database are related. Okay, this is one thing. Another thing is, which is known as known facts. We are not going to create a database for fiction data. You imagine any data, okay, and you said, let's create a database and let's put those imaginary data inside our database. Now, what is the purpose of that database? You are creating the database for some reason, for some objectives, okay? And when we talk about for some objectives, what we are going to put inside our database is those known facts. Known fact, that means when we say a student, we do have data university database. When I said student information or data is part of database, it is known fact that university has student. When we say, not necessarily something physical, when we say in our university database, we do have courses. It is known fact, something that is obvious that within university, courses exist. We do have prerequisites, we do have books within libraries. These are known facts, real things that does exist within that environment. Okay, that means they do have those that data, known fact that can be recorded, okay, within, let's say, and that have, we talk about implicit meaning. They do have implicit meaning. They do have meaning. When you say student, automatically you imagine what is a student. When we say course, automatically you know what is the meaning of the course, what is the meaning of the book. So all that related data, first thing, you have to be, your database should have related data and known fact, something that does exist that from that environment. Okay.
So, Doctor, can we define it in like one definition?
Naam.
Like defining a database, can I say, for example, a collection of real data related to each other, stored in one place?
It's stored in one place, not necessarily. Okay. Even real data, we have to say related data. Okay. The data, it is a collection of related data, and that data is, let's say, a known fact that from that it does have implicit meaning. We are not going to put something within the database that doesn't have any meaning. Okay, university database, I will tell you, I do have ABC data. What is that ABC? I have something to define it, something that does have meaning within our environment. This is what the environment, what we call the mini word. Because when you create your database, you are not going to create you are not representing the whole world, all the students over the world. You are representing just one part of the world. This is what is called as universe of discourse or mini word. Because you are just representing one, let's say, it's like a puzzle. You are representing one piece, okay, of information from let's say, the whole world. You are not representing, when you said, I do have university database, not all the students of the world are represented within your database. You are just presenting one part from the globe, okay, of that database. And that, it represents some aspect of the real world. When we say, I do have university database, it is from the real world, because the university exists in the real world, and we are representing a sample of that real world. Okay, and the data logically coherent and the inherent meaning. Okay, that means when we talk about student, when I do have courses, I do have books within university or library database, for instance, these are coherent data. That's something that you can represent. It does have a meaning and you can represent it. Okay, and when you said inherent meaning, that means automatically you know that a student, what is meant by student, what is meant by books, what is meant by course, prerequisite, instructor, finance department, for instance, registration office, all these types of data has some meaning. Automatically you understand this terminology that is part of that mini word, which is, let's say, university, for instance, environment. And that database has been built for specific purpose. Okay, you are not going, as we mentioned, you are not going to create a database for nothing. Okay, for pleasure. You are creating that database, for instance, to, let's say, to represent, to facilitate, for instance, some student management or courses management, to facilitate registration, whatever. Let's say the reason you have created your database. Okay, Shabab? This is an example, as we have already mentioned, a large commercial database, like Amazon, for instance, Google. You can find Facebook. It depends on the database and the data that is stored. Now, another important concept in the database, which is known as a DBMS, or database management system. And this is all, let's say, all what we have been talking about the database. Okay, without this DBMS, we cannot create the database. We cannot talk about the database itself. Okay, that means now when we talk about database management system, we are talking about a computerized system. You have a computerized system, okay, that will help people or users to create the database and to maintain the database. It's not just creating database once and that's all. You have to create the database. Okay, this system, or this DBMS, database management system, it will help you to create the database and maintain the database. Okay, it's like when you talk about DBMS, it is like a collection of system, collection of software. It's like you do have a big software, and inside that big software you do have many programs, okay, that works together in order to enable users to create the database and to maintain the database. What you can do inside using the DBMS, you can define a new database. You can, for instance, construct a new database. You can manipulate. You can see some terminology related to the database. But when you talk about DBMS, okay, it's like, just imagine that you do have a big system made up of many programs. It's not just one program. Okay, many programs that work together. Okay, let me just share with you.
Doctor, like PHP My Admin.
Yes. Ma'am? Yes. Okay, let's imagine, for instance, you do have, let's say, this is your let's say, sorry, let's say this is your, if we say that this is my DBMS, okay, and inside that DBMS, okay, you do have many programs. Okay, let's say if we said that these are some programs, okay, inside that DBMS, okay, and all those programs works together. Okay, they work together just to facilitate the usage of DBMS, the use of that DBMS. Okay, this is program 1, this is program 2, this is program 3, 4, whatever. They're considered other programs or processes, and each program has a specific task to be done within DBMS. Okay, maybe one of the program has the responsibility or the task to receive, let's say, data type. The other one, he has, let's say, the task for updating the data. The other one has task to search within the database, and so on. But at the end, that DBMS is a system made up of many programs together to form and to help you create and maintain the database. Okay, Shabab? We're going to stop here today. Any question, guys?